now listening to a Purple Crayon Productions broadcast.
You're going on a road trip. You're not sure where it will take you, just that you need to take it. You woke up one morning and looked at the sky and felt the inexplicable need to drive. And so you drove, and now you're on an interstate, following the pull of the sun and the mountains and thinking it was far too easy to just walk away. But you did. And so you drive, and as you drive you wonder what strange things are lying ahead of you. It's morning in Vermont. You wake up in your car on the shores of Lake Champlain to birds singing and the sun shining. You see deer wandering in the woods across the lake and the pink sky reflected in the water. You get back on the road through the mountains and stop at a diner where you order French toast with 4 types of Vermont maple syrup. The Northeast has treated you well. The waiter asks where you're headed, and you tell her you're not sure yet. I think I want to go west, you say, but I don't know where exactly. You've only seen a small fragment of what's to come, and the West feels so huge. You know so much is waiting for you out there. I have family in South Dakota, says the waiter. It feels like another planet. So your mind is made up then and there. I'm going to South Dakota, you say. My grandparents always used to tell me about a pacing white Mustang, kind of like an apparition that appeared in the Great Plains sometimes. Something about representing people who wandered to the West. It's too fast to be caught, and you can see glimpses of it on the prairie. I hope you see it, the waiter tells you. You hope so, too. It's a long, long way to South Dakota. So you take your time as you drive through the tall trees of upstate New York and the high-up roads of the Pennsylvania Turnpike. You drive for miles without exits and switch radio stations every few minutes, hearing each station fade away with static as you drive far above town after town. But there's one radio station that doesn't fade out, even a little. It plays cowboy songs, distant, wistful, and a little mournful too. As you enter Ohio, you hear, "Who will cradle the mouse to sleep? The cat will. Who will cradle the sun to sleep? The moon will. Who will cradle the moon to sleep? The sky will. Who will cradle the sky to sleep? The cowboys will. The cowboys will." You expected Ohio to be all cornfields and farmland, but the road you're driving down goes through a large forest, one that looks unbelievably serene. The road becomes a bridge passing over a small lake that seems to splinter and wind around the trees. As the road merges onto land again, the lake continues, and you drive deeper into the heart of the forest. Eventually, the trees split open into a clearing. There's grass around the road, and the lake opens up into a vast basin, shining in the sunlight. The trees around the lake look like small rolling hills, all distant and gathered together and moving slowly across the horizon. You look to the other side of the road and see a cabin sitting by the edge of the woods. There's a huge red banner draped across the door. Ohio Bigfoot Conference, starting right here on July 25th. You realize you don't know the date. This could have been weeks ago, and the cabin could be abandoned. It could be today. It could be next week. Only one way to find out. You park by the lake and walk to the cabin and peer into the window. The light is on, but there's nobody inside, just wooden walls and a fireplace and empty chairs. You start walking back to the car, and you hear a voice. "Looking for the conference?" it says. You turn around. There's a man standing in the parking lot with a big beard and a hunting jacket. "Not really," you admit. "I kind of just ended up here." He nods. "Well, I can still sell you a ticket. They're only $57. "That's okay," you say. But you don't want to leave just yet. Maybe you can still learn something. "I'm only in Ohio for a day, but what happens at the conference?" "Oh, we just have some speakers come in and we talk about Bigfoot." "Does Bigfoot live here?" you ask. "Well, there are a lot of Bigfoots in the world. There's not just one, you know. But a whole lot of them live in Ohio. There have been a few Bigfoot sightings in the state park here, but most of them happen in Cuyahoga Valley up north. Some people call him the Grassman there. He's got 3 toes and people are always seeing his footprints. He kind of looks a little more like a person than most Bigfoots, and he goes into the suburbs outside people's houses and just stares at them. My friend swears the Grassman once threw rocks at his house at night." "Have you seen the Grassman?" you ask. "I haven't, but even Native Americans wrote about seeing a big hairy monster that walked on 2 legs," the man tells you. I think it's pretty safe to say he's real. I also think I might have seen the bog monster over at Cedar Bog a few years back. Maybe about 60 years ago, some people saw a big man wandering through the bog, and some teenagers went missing. A few more people saw the monster, and then, what do you know, the bog got fenced in. They say it's to keep people from wandering in, but we at the Ohio Bigfoot Conference know it's just to keep the Bigfoot inside. Sorry, I talk a lot, he adds. You laugh. That's okay, it's interesting, you say. Does anything else live here besides Bigfoot, you ask, as you walk back to your car? Oh yeah, the man says. I think Ohio's got more mythical creatures than any other state, honestly. It's why we're set up here. You got the dog man, that's a half man, half dog, kind of like a werewolf. He's about the height of a person, and he's got gray skin and long arms and can walk on 2 legs. People see him all the time, all over the state. And there's more, so much more, he says. You reach your car. Well, it was nice talking to you, you tell him, honestly, even though you didn't do much talking. Where are you off to, he asks. You don't want to tell him you're still not quite sure. I'm going further west, South Dakota, I think. He looks fond and nods. I love it out there. Really makes you realize you're alive. You get in the car. Good luck, you say. He nods and smiles, and you close the door and drive back out through the forest.
Not a thing in the woods had Uncle Lusky the fear as he swung his gourd stick o'er the big spotted steers. We were young, sounding quicker than 8 full and 3, says McCluskey the Scotsman. They're the laddies for me. Then next come Bull Gord.
Someone is singing a song about logging in Wisconsin on the radio as you leave northeast Ohio, and the world widens into larger fields and farmland. The farmland you've always pictured in the imaginary Midwest that's existed in your mind. You realize it's the same radio station that accompanied you on your drive here, still serene, still wistful, still strangely consistent across so many miles. The sun gets lower, and the sky and clouds become deep blues and pinks and oranges. There's a glow on the horizon now, so bright it feels like a portal to another galaxy. You once heard someone say that there's nothing like an Ohio sunset. You sleep in the car again, and wake up with the sunrise and leave Ohio, crossing the border to Indiana with a gas station breakfast in your passenger seat.
Oh, the day was appointed, and soon did draw nigh, for $25 their fortunes to try. Both eager and anxious that morning 'twas found, the boss and the scaler appeared on the ground. With a whoop and a holler.
You always imagine driving through corn and wheat fields to be monotonous, but they're vast and bright and almost golden when the sunlight hits them. The skies are open, a deeper blue than you've ever seen. You roll your windows down and smell the air. The further west you drive, the clearer the air seems to be. You think maybe you see a glimpse of the horse the waiter mentioned, just for a second, out your window. You're probably imagining things. The apparition vanishes as quickly as it appeared. When you're in Iowa, you merge onto I-90, which points you toward South Dakota. You pass a small blue sign saying 457 miles to Wall Drug. You wonder where that is, and if you'll ever reach it. And then, a big orange sign with purple letters painted on top appears in the distance. Welcome to South Dakota, the land of infinite variety. Right after, there's another brightly colored billboard. Coffee and donuts at Wall Drug, only 5 cents. What is Wall Drug, you wonder? You keep driving. South Dakota is a land of infinite variety, although it may not seem that way at first. It's the start of the Great Plains, and is covered in rolling prairies and flat land. But these prairies give way to rivers and mountains, to immense rock formations miles above the ground, to the sandhills of Nebraska in the south, almost a desert of grass and dunes and craters. Mammoths and saber-toothed tigers used to wander the land, and massive, complete dinosaur skeletons have been found underneath. South Dakota has a bit of a dinosaur obsession. If you take SD-10 to the northeast part of the state, you'll reach an area with long green and yellow grass and tall, rolling hills. These are ancient glacial deposits and are characterized by harsh, fast winds and deep, thickly forested ravines. Here, you'll find Sika Hollow State Park. Numerous Sioux legends recall mysterious happenings in these ravines. Swamp gas and stumps glow in the dark, Small waterfalls are heard echoing as trapped air escapes. Springs are surrounded by quicksand, some creeks are red. Virtually nobody has ever lived in this area. Numerous people have even gone missing. Some believe that there's a beast living in the woods as well. The tall hills and grass sound beautiful, but this isn't where you want to go. You've had enough of getting lost in big forests. Right now, you want to see the land get flatter and flatter into stretches of prairie, the most expansive grassland in the country. You want to see for miles. The seemingly everlasting sequence of cowboy songs on the radio breaks up, and the announcer starts talking. He says, "Sometimes, being a cowboy can be lonely. That's what this song is about." You listen as you cross the Missouri River, the 100th meridian, where the Great Plains officially begin. And this is what you imagined when you thought of the prairie back home. It's like an uncharted sea, vast beyond belief, with a peculiar sameness that you can't escape from. Mile after mile, you see the same grass, the same sky, the same silhouette of the land, and you become acutely aware of the fact that you are alone. There are no trees, no hills, no distractions, just you and some billboards and gas stations and grass. You see another sign, bright yellow with rabbits and snakes, 100 miles to Wall Drug. And then, as you drive through the prairie, you see a taller sign with wooden horses and wagons on top. It reads, "The 1800 Town." You see horses grazing in the short yellow grass, and then some wagons, wooden and rickety, just sitting by the road. Soon, you start to see small wooden buildings. One is painted pale green and reads "Hotel" on the side in blue letters. There's a white church with a cross on top and a brown post office. You see an orange building marked saloon, and carriages and barns. There's a big gravel parking lot with a few cars in it, and you consider stopping. You're in the Wild West. You know towns like this are still deeply ingrained in the folklore of this state. But you pass the town. You want to go further. You see yet another sign, white this time with black painted buffalo, 65 miles to the Badlands. You speed up. You feel like the only car on I-90. You think you see a glimpse of the horse again, running ahead of you, leading you further west, and then vanishing. The world seems wide open. Then, an hour later, you see them, coming out of nowhere. The Badlands. Rocks extend out of the ground and then stretch on for miles. The land is dry and sharp, a little red, a little brown, a little yellow. The rocks look completely out of place, like something set on the land long ago by some kind of outside force. You're overwhelmed by how vivid the colors are. They make everything else in the world seem faded and dim. You park the car on the side of the road and get out. You begin to walk. Being in the Badlands doesn't feel like being on Earth. It's otherworldly. It's bizarre. You feel like these hills and spires and plateaus hold mysteries and myths hidden away somewhere. The spires reach up into the sky. They look like they're reaching for something in particular, some force or being beyond anything you can fathom. The rock formations seem like they're pulling you in, daring you to climb and climb until you reach the top and discover their mysteries and meet whatever may still be hidden there. They're entrancing. They're almost hypnotic. For centuries, the Badlands have been viewed with both dread and awe. Over 10,000 years ago, nomadic tribes migrated into the area from the Bering Land Bridge and hunted mammoths. One of the largest T-Rex skeletons ever found was uncovered here. You imagine dinosaurs wandering through the same huge stretches of rocks you're looking at now. They both are completely overwhelming and wonderful. It seems fitting. Both the Sioux and early French trappers gave the area names translating directly to Badlands, and they, among others, had countless legends and tales inspired by the landscape. But the hidden mysteries of the Badlands aren't just echoes of the past. There are some myths that still persist today. One of them is the Banshee of the Badlands, who is said to appear out of the darkness to warn people of up-and-coming deaths. Charles M. Skinner describes the Banshee best in his book Myths and Legends of Our Own Land, written in the late 19th century. He writes, "Hell with the fires out is what the Badlands of Dakota have been called. It's an ancient sea bottom, with its clay strata worn by frost and floods. Rattlesnakes bask at the edge of the crater above burning coal seams. By moonlight, when the scenery is most suggestive and unearthly, and the noises of wolves and owls inspire uneasy feelings, the ghost is seen on a hill a mile south of the Watchdog Plateau, her hair blowing, her arms tossing in strange gestures. If cowboys, hunters, or anyone for good or ill are going through this country past the plateau at night, the rocks are lighted with phosphor flashes, and the Banshee sweeps upon them. As if wishing to speak, or as if waiting for a question that it has occurred to none to ask, she stands beside them. But if asked what she wants, she flings her arms aloft, and with a shriek that echoes through the blasted gulches for a mile, she disappears, and an instant later is seen wringing her hands on her hilltop. Cattle will not graze near the haunted plateau, and the cowboys keep aloof from it. The creature has a companion, sometimes, in an unfleshed skeleton that trudges about the ash and clay and haunts the camps in search for music. If he hears it, he will sit outside the door and nod in time to it, while a violin left within his reach is eagerly seized and will be played on through half the night. The music is wondrous, now as soft as the stir of the wind in the sage, sometimes as harsh as the cry of a wolf, or startling as the stir of a rattler. As the east begins to brighten, the music grows fainter, and when it is fairly light, it has ceased altogether. But he who listens to it must on no account follow the player if the skeleton moves away, for not only will it lead him into the rocky pitfalls whence escape is hopeless, but when there the music will intoxicate, madden, and will finally charm his soul from his body. For you, it's hot, and everything looks too bright to be real. You walk along the rocks, sometimes climbing along the steep walls in order to get higher. Some of the rocks look like sculptures of faces or hands, but all of them look eerily similar too. You could be going in circles. You wouldn't know. As you climb, you reach a big cliff, looking out over the rest of the Badlands. When you look out, you're overwhelmed by how terrifying and beautiful everything is. It takes your breath away. Further out, you see the prairie from above. You sit. The trail doesn't allow you to go any further. You're at the very top of the Badlands, and you're beyond everything the earth can possibly touch. You keep looking up at the still blue sky expectantly, half thinking it will crack open, and something huge and otherworldly will crash down. You hear the wind blowing louder. You don't know how much time has passed. Finally, you tear yourself away, but you feel like you could be entranced by this view, entranced into wandering the land forever. You keep driving through the Badlands, following the sky. You see more lone billboards. See the 80-foot dinosaur, while drug. See a real jackalope, while drug. Fresh ice water for the lone traveler, while drug. And then you see an exit 109, Wall, South Dakota. You've seen far too many signs to pass it by, and the message to the lone traveler seemed like it was calling out to you, specifically. You pass a huge green brontosaurus statue, the Wall-Drug 80-foot dinosaur. Don't miss it, a sign reads, nestled in a small stretch of rock in the middle of the grass. The road veers to the right, and there it is, surrounded by the Dakota Antique Shop and the Cactus Cafe and Lounge, Wall-Drug itself, at the very edge of the Badlands, as they gradually come closer and closer to the earth. There's a massive gray rabbit statue with antlers. It's a jackalope, a mythical jackrabbit and antelope combination that appears in tall tales across the state. The building is long and flat, with a bright yellow sign reading Wall Drugstore since 1931. Glad you made it. Then, a picture of a T-Rex that says do lunch or be lunch. It feels vaguely threatening. After the Badlands, you don't want to risk anything. so you get lunch. You eat a maple donut and homemade pie. There's a mechanical T-Rex and indoor mining attractions. It's the tackiest place you've ever seen, so tacky it feels surreal, like another planet in the exact opposite way that the Badlands felt like another planet. When you're driving away, you see a final sign, alone on the prairie like the others, reading, "Hope you dug while drug." You smile to yourself. You did. The radio continues as you reach the edge of South Dakota, where it runs into Wyoming. The sad songs and the lone announcer have almost become like companions to you. You wonder if they'll ever fade away into static, like all other radio stations do. You don't want them to. They're constant when nothing else can be. You have one more stop before you leave South Dakota, the Black Hills, the oldest set of mountains in the U.S. The land changes again, moving upward like the Badlands, but taller, sharper, reaching higher up into the sky. These rocks are surrounded by pine trees, more trees than you've seen since leaving Ohio. You see mountains, real mountains, in the distance. You wonder how it's possible for something so green and so golden and grandiose to exist so suddenly in a place like this. They feel almost untouchable. They were formed by winds and volcanic activity, but something about them seems more mystical, more fantastic, than any natural explanation can ever provide. There are also ghost towns of the Black Hills, hidden among rock walls and ravines, echoes of old mining centers from centuries ago. The most famous of these towns is Deadwood. Deadwood was established in 1875 when a miner found gold in a narrow canyon in the northern Black Hills. The canyon walls were lined with dead trees, giving it its name, Deadwood Gulch. Soon, thousands of tents covered the canyon, and a successful gold mine was established. As the population grew, the tents were replaced with saloons, dance halls, gambling establishments, and theaters. Deadwood was also lively enough to attract some famous and infamous figures and characters in Wild West folklore. This gave it the nickname Rough and Tumble Deadwood that some still use today. One famous folk character who moved to Deadwood was Wild Bill Hickok, a legendary figure known for his acting and gunfighting skills. Hickok had enemies throughout the West, which meant he always sat with his back against the wall just in case. But in August 1876, he was playing poker at a crowded saloon, where the only available seat left him with his back exposed to an open door. His old enemy, Jack Broken Nose McCall, seeking vengeance for the murder of his brother in Kansas, fired a shot into the back of Hickok's head. From his fingers fell 2 black aces and 2 black eights, a combination that has since been known as the dead man's hand. American popular culture still uses this hand to symbolize bad luck and dark omens. Around the same time, Calamity Jane arrived in Deadwood as well. Jane was the self-proclaimed queen of the Wild West, and was known to act and dress like a man, shoot like a cowboy, drink like a fish, and exaggerate the tales of her life to any and all who would listen. She was renowned for her excellent marksmanship and bawdy behavior, and was said to have been an army scout, a bullwhacker, a nurse, a cook, a prospector, a gambler, a heavy drinker, and one of the most foul-mouthed people in the West. She was an orphan who traveled from Wyoming to Utah to Missouri to Montana, and eventually to Deadwood, where she was a prospector at the gold mines and a living legend. But she couldn't stay tied down in one place for too long. She eventually left for El Paso, where she gave birth to a daughter, then ran a hotel in Boulder, participated in a Wild West show in Missouri, and finally moved to the Pacific Northwest, where she tried to sell her life story to the masses. But Jane struggled to hold down a job because of issues with alcohol, and eventually, at the end of her life, she returned to Deadwood. Her funeral was one of the biggest ever held in South Dakota. Deadwood also has a haunted hotel, built by Seth Bullock, its sheriff during its heyday. It was said Bullock could outstare a cobra, and was obsessed with making his hotel as grand as possible. Its floors were exclusively covered in velvet, and it had a restaurant, a grand piano, and a library. After Bullock's death, legend says he continued to play host there. Reports of hauntings at the Bullock Hotel are so common that it's been featured on several ghost hunting TV shows. Staff and guests have seen glassware tossed by an invisible force and heard Bullock's boots thumping on the stairs, as well as the sound of a non-existent piano playing ragtime music. Some have reported actually seeing a cloudy figure in the hallway or smelling cigars. Others have heard whistling and a male voice when no one is present, or been tapped on the shoulder by unseen hands. After you hike through the hills, feeling a little like you're walking on a mountain over the ocean, you drive to Deadwood. It's a tourist attraction now, having moved forward into the 21st century and selling cowboy hats and t-shirts. But in every building, on every street, you can almost feel another presence watching you. As the sun begins to set, you walk past the hotel and look in through the windows. You want to access this world of miners and cowboys in the Wild West, a world that exists only in stories and warped, fantastical memories. You need to get back into reality. You drive away from the myths and legends and ghosts that you felt haunting the streets, looking at you as you wandered through their old town. You remember that you're a person living here, now. You find a motel and sleep on the first floor, with the highway still visible from the window. But as you lie in bed, you miss the sound of the road, of the radio station with cowboy songs that never end. You open the window to smell the air and feel the full moon. And you think, as you listen to the sounds of the prairie, you hear music coming from the radio station with the wind. Who will cradle the mouse to sleep? The cat will. Who will cradle the sun to sleep? The moon will. Who will cradle the moon to sleep? The sky will. Who will cradle the sky to sleep? The cowboys will. The cowboys will. You listen to the song as you fall asleep. Tomorrow, you will drive more. Supernatural Road Trip is written by Catherine Horowitz. Information comes from the Columbus Navigator, the Ohio Bigfoot Conference, legendsofamerica.com, the U.S. National Park Service, and William Gropper's American Folk Heroes map. Music is by American Moon Bicycle, Fiel, and Lobo Loco. Cowboy songs are by Sarah Rule and the Unknown Lumberjacks of Wisconsin.